Want to know how to set boundaries with men in a way that makes him respect you more? Wondering what types of boundaries are good to set with men early on that put you in the driver's seat? I've got all that coming up for you right now. Hey everybody, I'm dating and relationship coach Ryan Patrick, and welcome to beautiful Valencia, Spain. Now this week is really special because this week Valencia is celebrating Las Fallas. It's a celebration that's normally celebrated in March, actually the entire month of March, but because of the virus, it's being celebrated this specific week in September. Now, Las Fallas is a super interesting event because if you walk through every single neighborhood, including ours here in Rusafa, you're gonna see these big Disney-like structures that are super colorful and super animate, and what they're gonna do at the end of this week is burn them all to the ground. So as you walk around the city, you're gonna see these structures. You're also gonna see little kids throwing firecrackers. You're gonna hear loud sonic booms from larger firecrackers that are being thrown, and it's just a really fun time to be here. As always, I'm really happy to have you here today. If this is your first time on the channel, just make sure to click that subscribe button below, and if you find value in today's content, please make sure to hit that like button. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and it's just a great free way to support my channel. Also, if you have a question or two for me that you need my specific opinion on, whether it be a guy that you're dating or maybe you've got a hot date coming up and just need some advice, make sure to hit me up on my Wizio page at wizio.com/Ryan Patrick. There, I'm gonna give you a 4 to 7 minute video response based on the questions that you give me, either within 2 days if it's an emergency, or 7 days if you can take a little bit more time. So I'll be over there if you need me. Great, so now that we've discussed those items, let's talk about setting boundaries with men. This is just something that is so important, and I feel a lot of you aren't doing this. Based on my Wizio requests, based on YouTube comments, there are many more opportunities for you all to place a line in the sand and let men know what you're willing to put up with. So I'm gonna go through 5 action steps right now that you can take to set boundaries with men immediately. So the first one is know what they are. Boundaries are gonna be different for all of you. A lot of you are gonna have different levels of tolerance for different things, okay? A lot of you have dated a lot in your lives. Maybe you're older, maybe you've come out of a marriage, and you just know what you're willing to put up with a man. Now, there's no reason why you should have to sacrifice what that is just because you happen to be stepping back into the dating game freshly after a couple decades, okay? This is really key because I feel through my consultations, through Wizio requests, through YouTube comments, I hear a lot of you basically saying that you feel that you have to sacrifice a bit of yourself because you want to be able to put your best foot forward with a man and show him that you're amenable to change, right? Because it's kind of a new thing for you, stepping back into dating, you feel like you have to give up things that you may not necessarily have done in the past, right? Before you got into that marriage or that more serious relationship, wherever you might find yourself. So I'm here to tell you that you absolutely need to go the opposite direction than what you're probably thinking. I want you to actually double down on your boundaries and double down on the things that you're not willing to put up with men. And by doing that, it's a bit counterintuitive because men will see that and they see that you have preferences, that you have a certain lifestyle, a certain way of living, and they're gonna respect you for that, especially if you're consistent with it. What happens when men see you sort of, not really holding to your convictions, that's when the lack of respect really steps in. That's when men look at you and they say, oh, this woman doesn't really know what she wants. She doesn't even know who she is or what she's about. And the attraction starts waning, the attraction starts slipping. So you're not doing this for men. Let me just make that very clear for those of you who are thinking, oh, you're just doing all this for men. You're doing this for you. But I'm letting you know what the net result is gonna be in the dating world and what's happening around you, particularly from the male perspective. And that's just that men are going to gravitate towards you and really respect you for what you already want for yourself deep inside. So don't sacrifice the things that you want and double down on the things that you just cannot put up with men. Now, the second critical action step, and this one is arguably the most important of the group that I'm gonna discuss today, but it's know why you have them. Know why you have these boundaries, okay? If we don't concretely understand in our minds why we have these boundaries, they will literally disappear. They will blow away with the wind. And I see it happen all too often. And your intuition is gonna do its best job to grip on to those boundaries if you yourself set the intention to hold on to them. I'll give you an example. So if you know that you can't stand when men speak down to you, okay? Maybe they give you a kind of a backhanded compliment or something, and you know what that feels like, you know what that looks like, and maybe it's something that an ex did to you, okay? This is something that you need to concretely remember what that feeling elicited, right? What the feeling that came out of you when that took place in your past, and you need to hold on to that and not allow it to happen in the future. That's your why when it comes to that specific boundary. And again, it needs to be reiterated, even though it may even be painful for some of you at times. You need to remember why you're holding on to that, because the last thing you want is to forget and just kind of be a pushover with guys, you know, treating you poorly again and giving you backhanded compliments and speaking down to you. And all of the things that you know you could have prevented simply by putting that boundary down. And the first time you see it, letting that guy know, hey, I don't appreciate that. Maybe you could, if you're trying to give me a compliment, try a little bit harder, but not put me down in the process. And I'm saying explicitly lay it out with a man. That's how you properly lay down a boundary. You do it in your head for yourself, but you also need to verbalize specifically what's bothering you, so that way that man knows in the future that if, you know, he happens to do this again, you might call it out once or twice again, just so the pattern is kind of squashed, where he's not doing this to you anymore. But if he keeps pushing and he keeps trying to cross your boundary, that there might be something negative that happens. There might be some consequence, which we're gonna get into in just a second. Now, the third action step is plant them early on. You wanna plant these boundaries with men early on in getting to know them. This is gonna be important because if you don't do this, if you don't plant that boundary early on with the man, it's gonna feel a little like whiplash for him if, let's say, you get 2 months in and you start laying down the law when it comes to one of your boundaries, when you could have set that in the first date or two, okay? So it's not gonna be as powerful if you wait, right? If you are just trying to put your best foot forward with the man and you say, okay, you know, I can put up with this for a little bit, but then at some point I'm gonna let him know. No. We're gonna set this early on with him. And you don't need to be mean about it. You don't need to be belligerent about it, right? You can just say, oh, yes, you wanna go over to your place for date number 2. I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just not feeling really comfortable with, you know, going to your place for a date, because we know what that leads to. Something like that. Very respectful and very respectable to be putting that boundary down. And again, going back to the first action step, guys they're gonna respect you for being concrete in knowing what your boundaries are, knowing why you have them, and then planting them early on. The fourth action step is don't let him cross. Do not let him cross that boundary. Even if you let it happen one time, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced or seen this in some fashion by now, you let it happen once, he's gonna do it again and again and again. You know that old saying, you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. Okay, this is exactly what we're talking about here. As soon as you feel uncomfortable, as soon as that feeling creeps up where you're just like, gosh, I wish he wouldn't do this. I wish I wouldn't feel this way. That's when you have to have a voice. That's when you have to speak up, ladies, because no one is going to do that for you. And believe me, the first time you can do this for yourself and you can hear yourself have that voice for yourself, it's so empowering and it gets so easy. And for a lot of you, I can just see it. And I've done this for myself in the past. And it's almost like a smile creeps across your face because you know you stuck up for yourself. And you know that, you're not putting up with any crap. We're done. We're done with that, okay? So do not let him cross that line in the sand that you put down with him early on. You understand why you have that boundary, and if he needs an explanation, give it to him. Now, you should never be in a place where you have to constantly explain yourself. That's not what we're talking about here. If he needs a general explanation of why you have a certain boundary, again, this is a personal preference. If you feel he's worthy of an explanation, then give it to him. If he's not, that means a couple things. Number one, it means that he probably hasn't put that much investment into you yet to warrant an explanation from you, okay? That's very important. And then the other thing too is that, sometimes the boundary is so small or so obvious that there's no reason why he needs dialogue about that particular boundary, right? If you're like, I don't want to have sex right now, you should never feel like you're forced into a position where you need to explain why you don't want to have sex with a man or be physical with a man, okay? So those two things really are kind of cover the big buckets there. So again, be strong, be forceful in your speech when it comes to your boundaries. And let me just tell you, if it requires you to get the heck out of there and get out of his presence because he's just not getting it, let me be the first one to say, do it. Get the hell out of there, because if he's not getting it, you leaving will certainly jolt something for him. And that leads me to action step number 5, which is show him consequences. Show him consequences. We just discussed it in the previous action step, which is you can leave. If you're at a restaurant with him and he's being rude or he's crossing a boundary, get up from the table and walk away, okay? Another way is, let's just say you're texting with him, right? You're kind of following some of my recommendations on texting and you're using rule number 2, which is building anticipation for the next date, right? And you're kind of flirting a bit, and all of a sudden he starts sexting with you, okay? And maybe you had mentioned something because he kind of got a little graphic, or maybe he sent you a photo that was unsolicited and you're just like, whoa, dude, like, this is no good, okay? When it comes to texting and setting a boundary, just stop texting him. Literally stop texting him for 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever you feel the length of time should be for him to get it. And he might keep texting you, hey, where did you go? But he needs to feel that level of consequence for his action. Show him the consequence first and then reiterate it after the fact by explaining what just happened. I think that is really the most mature way to really diagram a boundary and a consequence for not following it for men or for anybody. Show them the consequence, and then after the consequence has been felt by the other person, give them a little explanation. Again, if you feel it's necessary, if you feel the guy is worth a second chance, that's when that explanation will come in. But never feel bad about showing him a consequence. Again, you got shit to do. You got your life to live, and that should be one that is, full of respect from other people. The golden rule, do unto others as you want done unto you. And a life that should be full of fairly simple and easy dating experiences with the right mix of consequence and good energy mixed in there. When you're on these dates, showing men just great energy. If you're having a good time, if he's being respectful, great eye contact, just smiling and really being present, active listening, things like this. But when things are going the wrong direction, you need to have those boundaries laid in the sand, clearly labeled, and that's what's gonna create a more stress-free, simpler dating experience for you all. So I appreciate you being here for another Monday video. Again, Valencia, Las Fallas. This is just so cool to be on this trip and to bring you along for some of my travel journeys with me and Brittany. Brittany's coming up in a video, by the way. I'm really excited for you to see that one. We're gonna talk about the ins and outs of marriage. And for those of you who may have that question or two, and it's just something that feels complex and complicated, you want a little help working through it, I'm here for you. Just go to wizio.com/Ryan Patrick, and you can see my reviews there. The ladies are leaving some excellent reviews, 5-star reviews. You can read a little bit about what people are saying. You can also watch part of my Wizios for other people, so you can kind of see what you're getting in return when you reach out to me with a Wizio request. So I appreciate you all being here today, and I'll see you next week.